Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being patient. We really appreciate that. We have a great panel of folks here today. We have 44 days left into 2021, if anybody can believe that. So today we're going to focus on post-pandemic, how employers are preparing for 2021. We're going to reflect a little bit on 2020, how small businesses, mid-sized businesses, employees were affected. So me personally, working in the HR outsourcing and payroll space, that's allowed me to see actually a lot of different types of businesses, both small and large, and what they've all gone through. It's been a lot of different challenges depending on the industries. Some were affected more, like hospitality, and some other industries, like frontline workers actually had the opposite, where they had to be at the workplace. Today we want to share some of that knowledge and experience with you. But before we get started, I wanted to. I'm not sure if Jessica's going to do that or not. I'll give her a second. If not, I'll do that. Okay, I'm not going to hold that up. Okay, so I'm Keith Tirico. I'm currently a business development consultant for Synchrony HR. I've held roles as a regional vice president for a national PEO, as well as a managing member for a PEO consulting firm. In addition to having over 10 years of experience in the HR outsourcing industry, I'm a licensed insurance agent. Peggy, I'm going to take a stab at introducing you, or did you want to introduce yourself?
No, you can introduce me.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and introduce myself while Keith is unfreezing himself. My name is Max Rowe. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm currently a risk management consultant for Assured Partners. I primarily focus on property casualty insurance and delivering risk management solutions to small businesses, whether that be in the storage industry or really anything for that matter. Been doing this for about 4 years. I guess my job is really just to kind of understand your business and get to know any pain points you may have in your insurance strategy, and kind of apply my knowledge and expertise on, not only driving down costs on the insurance spend on the bottom line, but also just making sure you have a robust risk management program, God forbid if something were to happen to your business.
Am I back? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay.
You're back. I was getting ready to introduce myself, but if you're here, you can do it.
I don't know exactly where we left off, but Peggy has 30 years of experience in the HR workers' compensation space as well. Through the PEO, she's been able to be a resource and provide support for the unique needs of a variety of clients. Working with her operationals team, Peggy takes pride in delivering value-added services, giving clients confidence in an ever-changing time. And just to kind of go off the cuff a little bit, I was reading that. Peggy's a pretty amazing person. She works operations. She is the front.
Oh no, he's frozen again. Here we go, Keith. You're frozen. Oh boy, it's all good. We've been on so many calls with Keith, and he never freezes on us.
This is the first time.
Right, exactly. Someone
Well, I guess, Peggy, do you want to go ahead and, elaborate on it a little bit while we wait to get Keith back?
Correct. So I have been in the PEO space for the last 10 years, and just to kind of even get started with where we are, I am the operational person, so I'm the forward facing person for our clients. And the reality is I've come from an HR background. So given that we're an HR services industry that's helpful, we also have had just a variety of experiences with our clients, in particular this last year. So I know Keith was mentioning that we were going to talk a little bit, we were going to look backwards just a little bit and talk about that and kind of some of the things and situations that have happened this year from an HR payroll perspective. This has been a very dynamic year. I'm sure we would all agree with that. But as a forward-facing person in an HR industry, I can remember a day in March where I felt like my life had changed drastically. Like it was all of a sudden, the calls that I was getting for support, for coaching, counseling. How do I handle this? Where do I go? Related to matters of HR support and people. They were still about people, but it was calls from our clients that converted to calls that had fear and uncertainty within every question and every comment, every conversation. And it was not just one call a day, it was all day, every day. And, I would say in the last year, some of the things, as we saw the implementation of various legislation, whether it be the CARES Act, which had, protection for families, that had some assistance through the PPP for businesses, or employee retention credit, whatever it was that was in there, that was a conversation while we helped our clients to kind of move through that sense of confidence. And as you know, it's like starting a new business. You have all this legislation that comes out, and suddenly you're like, okay, not only what is it and what do I do with that, but we also need to figure out how to implement that into our systems and services and the things that we were doing to support our clients. So that's, that transition from there, we move on to FFCRA, and well, actually unemployment came in there, and we saw times of people being furloughed and unemployment, and what does that look, and how do you get people back to work when they're making more money sitting at home? So those conversations, and then ultimately I would say we continue to have conversations around COVID and how that affects my business. Should I have people in? How do I communicate with my employees? What do I need to say? And ultimately, do they or do they not get paid? So it's been a very interesting time. I'm not sure how to make that go away, but anyway, the thing that we have really done, besides trying to be there on the phone calls, other than the one that I maybe just had to hang up on, if you could hear that, we've really tried to be what our clients need in the moment that they need it. Whether it be, an advocate for just the uncertainty of what's going on, whether it be helping them to gather information and reports for trying to figure out, navigate the Payroll Protection Act, the PPP, and getting loan forgiveness. Really having someone by your side, and as a business, because, it's not over. The uncertainty is not over. A lot of these things had a deadline of they were going to end December 31st, but the reality is COVID and the pandemic is still there. So, trying to find resources and advocates throughout the process of people that either are more knowledgeable than you and or have the experience that they can share and help you navigate, I think has been really important for our clients. Trying to help them just create a culture that's both supportive and one of survival in their case. So, really, that's kind of what we have seen, just in looking back, what that looks like going backwards. And the one thing I forgot to mention is certainly the furloughs, the unemployment claims, and how to manage that was a question that really came not only from our clients, but also from our client employees. So, Keith, you're like a bouncing ball.
Am I back?
Yes.
Oh,
for this minute.
I'm trying to figure out how to get back in here. Yeah. And, Peggy, if I could kind of jump on that a little bit. I mean, this happened so fast where even the government didn't know what the legislation was. And you can probably attest to this. We were actually calling up, we do have, attorneys on staff. I mean, we have, contact into like legislation as it's changing. And the answer that we were getting was, we don't know. So we had to really make some real-time decisions, I mean, in a week, as far as helping people complete applications, actually look at their payrolls to understand what they actually qualified for, what they should be applying for. And then also, and then really, like I said, it's all industry related on what you're in, but just to kind of go to maybe a little different industry than what our audience is. I mean, folks were literally looking at, terminating entire population of people. And if they were to do that incorrectly, you had situations where they did not understand what furloughing versus termination meant. And also there was new laws to the furloughing that were allowing, certain things that.
Uh-oh, there he goes again. Absolutely. As Keith said, there were things out there with regard to furlough. Oh, there you go. You're back. I was picking up.
I'm so sorry, guys.
I pick up mid-sentence for you.
I was just saying, which is an important point on the furloughing. You were able to furlough and an employee, right?
This poor guy.
Pay because you were been aware of that they could do. And I think one of the other important things, Peggy, is that if they were to furlough those employees and then bring them back on 30 days later, which was the case in a lot of situations, you wouldn't have to rehire them with incomplete new I-9s or do all that other type of stuff. So strategies like that, the preparation of it, navigating that CARES Act as it was happening real time. But like you were saying, going forward though into 2021, there are some changes that are coming in. I'm sure we're going to get a whole bunch more, especially with the government change right now. They're talking about lockdown again.
Yeah,
so
it's
I don't mean to steal your thunder.
No, it's okay. I don't have any thunder. But I think it's interesting as you go forward and you look at what does 2021 look like. And a lot of the articles and stuff that I read, because again, the FFCRA expires on December 31st. And the question is, well, now what? What will happen? And, going back to when the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Act, came into place, it was an unusual circumstance kind of in our history in that it was something that had bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. And so it came in very quickly, which is not normal. And basically, for the first time in our history, we had a paid leave law, which is unusual, never happened before. So the question that people are asking, will FFCRA continue into 2021? Honestly, we all know with as uncertain as the election is, we don't know. We really don't know. But the reality is that the support that was given to it on the forefront seems to indicate, or someone would be able to deduce, that it would probably get the same support again in 2021, especially given the fact that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. So, it's interesting just to kind of hear people's perspective around that. But a lot of uncertainty what's coming in 2021.
Even ADA, which we'll get into a little bit later. I mean, the American Disabilities Act, providing reasonable accommodations. I mean, what does that really mean? I don't want to get into that because I want to bring, Max in a little bit, but we can cover a little bit of that. But you're right. I mean, it's changing, and we will talk about that in a second. But, Max, you're on the commercial side, right?
Yes.
And we got flooded with the CARES Act stuff, right? That was the immediate thing that we got hit with, and termination, all that stuff, employee benefits. But the second big question that we were getting was around BI, which is the business interruption claims. And folks were asking us a lot of questions like, hey, are we covered for this? I mean, what does this look like for us? Is it in our policy? I mean, it is a civil shutdown.
Yeah, but so this is all completely up in the air right now, but kind of the main question that the main point that people are kind of saying is there hasn't been a physical loss, which is, when you file a claim, it's due to a physical loss, as a result of, a hurricane or a tornado, something like that, flooding. And the coronavirus pandemic has not triggered physical losses. So it's kind of tough. It's in kind of right now, it's going state by state on, should the insurance companies be paying out these business interruption / extra expense claims for lost revenues due to this pandemic. But ultimately, I'm kind of thinking, well, not thinking. Ultimately, it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and it's going to be a decision wide-based across the United States where they're going to have to come up and decide, are some of these claims going to get paid out? I can't imagine right now they're getting all completely denied and shut down. But if that changes, I would say it doesn't hurt to kind of have your foot in the door already, because, if they decide in the beginning of 2021, even in 6 months from now, if they decide, hey, you know what, we're going to start paying out some of these business interruption claims that we thought were previously denied, it might be good to have a claim already registered so it doesn't kind of seem like you're just going for a handout. Now,
Right.
back to my point earlier, it is good to say, or my point earlier, it is still being all duked out, and it'll eventually go to the Supreme Court, certainly. But Keith and I were talking a little bit last week about in 2001 when the World Trade Center were taken down. There was a lot of change to liability and property insurance on that landscape based on terrorism, and now built into insurance policies, there's the TRIA endorsement, which is basically kind of a way for insurance companies to protect themselves against paying out claims due to terrorism/war. So granted, I'm not on the insurance company side, but I would think kind of like the cause and effect that 9/11 had on the insurance landscape, this is definitely going to have a big aftershock on, the way that they look at risk, the way that they kind of value doing risks and who they value, insuring. I would think there's going to be some kind of policy exclusion or endorsement for a pandemic or a virus outbreak or anything. I'm not sure what the language would be at this point, but I think there's got to be some way for insurance companies to hedge themselves against having to pay out claims like this, because if it comes back to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says, all right, you got to start paying out claims, a lot of these insurance companies are going to not financially, it's not going to bode very well.
Bankrupt. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough to say exactly what's going to happen, but I'm just kind of looking back to other, events in history and cause and effects to other kind of comparable events that have kind of caused the landscape of the insurance market to change and switch. So I guess that's.
Yeah, would that be mandatory, you think? Like, I mean, in 2021, do you foresee maybe like not so much as an exclusion or not so much as an endorsement, but possibly, a mandatory? Because I believe with the, and I correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm in your space a little bit, but with the terrorism, I mean, that's just automatically included increasing the insurance policies to some percentage.
Yep. Yeah. So it's up and if I have an insurance policy for Max's mini storage. At the bottom of the policy, I can check a box to, I opt out of TRIA coverage. And I mean, it's not going to save me any money or very much money, but or I can continue to, be a part of the TRIA coverage. But it is a little bit of an increase in premium. But as an insurance agent, I mean, better to be prepared than unprepared for something that happens. I mean, a year ago right now, I don't think anyone in America would have foreseen what we're going through right now. So I think it's best to be prepared.
Is there any negative for someone to, say, process a claim? I mean, would that work against them, kind of like, your car insurance or something like that? If I put a claim in, are they going to look at me more negatively, or?
I don't think so, because claims get denied all the time. It's tough to say. I mean, if you're going to come and but come for a huge pot of gold, yeah, it might not bode super well. And in the future, if you come forward with a claim, they might have that in the back of their mind. But I don't think, it's going to be like, all right, they filed a claim, they're on some kind of list, anything like that. I think it's just, the state of everyone not knowing what's going on. I mean, the insurance companies don't know what's going on this front. So it's going to come down, like I said, to the Supreme Court ultimately.
Yeah, I agree.
In my opinion, to make the final decision on, are these claims going to get, paid out to any extent or not?
So to everybody that's out there, some of the things that I'm seeing, just to share our knowledge with you, because we touch, so many companies and so many businesses, some of the claims, the verbiage, that have hired firms, and some of the things that they're saying is, a civil shutdown. And sometimes that's in the policy as well, by the way, that could help you. And, civil authority prohibiting access to a business premise. And then the other thing is the propensity of the virus to cling, right, and stick to surfaces could predicate a physical claim because it is actually on the surface. So I'm not an attorney, but I'm just trying to share with you some of the knowledge and some of the things that I see that they're trying to utilize if any of you guys were affected by that. But just to, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the courts in 2021. But just to move this a little forward, right? Let's talk workplace culture. So Peggy, I'm going to come back to you on this, but we now have risks that are related to the COVID, right? As more people start to return to work. You're starting to see that more and more every day, or who knows, maybe we're all going to be going home again soon. Either way, that's something we have to face. But companies are going to need to develop a strategy for keeping employees safe in the workplace. So you have changing federal regulations, you have new created liabilities for owners, and it's kind of, not transparent, almost vague on purpose, which is a little scary. And there's some legal consequences, right? That if you don't position yourself correctly on how you go about it, that can kind of put you in there. I mean, if you look back to the Me Too movements, if you look at, the Black Lives Matters, there's a lot of doors that are open that you have to make sure that the way that you're handling these type of situations with folks from the employer standpoint, that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Are there any bullets or anything you can kind of put out there that folks should be thinking about in 2021 as it relates to workplace culture and safety?
Sure. I think a couple things. Number one, the thing is, I talk to people, the thing that's really important is that, number one, you have a plan of just how does this impact me? I mean, there's been enough talk about it that, it's important for people to have a plan, not only for how to address what might come, what we've seen come, what you've heard people experience around you as business owners. You're probably connected to other people, but to have a plan around that, to ask the question, are we prepared? What's our contingency plan? What's the plan if people get COVID? The second thing I would say is be consistent. So within your plan, I guess the advantage of having a plan is to be able to refer to it when the unexpected becomes reality, or whatever your contingency plan becomes a reality. But be consistent in how you're implementing those strategies kind of throughout your organization with your people, depending on what it is. Okay. And I think the other thing that in that plan, there's a couple things I want to make sure it addresses. Number one, what strategy do you have for how your people work? We saw a lot of people go to remote work this year. And, initially, I remember when this whole thing started, a lot of folks were like, my people can't do that. That doesn't work for us. That's not in our culture. Really, I think what COVID is really doing for us is forcing us to shift our cultures, forcing us to test our realities to say, does this really need to be the way it is? So if we look at things like that and you say, okay, so can we do a work strategy, a remote work strategy? What would that look like? Are there alternative work weeks? Like we had a situation where we had potential exposure within the office, and we had people that needed to do things internally that were willing to work off hours and give them an opportunity to say, I'm going to be here when other people aren't here. So if they need to be here, are there strategies? And I think the word that comes through this, we changed that word COVID to creativity. How can we be creative in what we're doing and how we're doing it? One of the articles that I read talked about how COVID is really forced kind of a transition in technology. It's really forced people to look at use of technology, work for home strategies. We talk about looking forward, and the question is, where will we be looking at using alternative sources? Would we be outsourcing some of our needs that maybe can't be done by our employees. How could we outsource that? They talked about, would we see the use of more technology and robots, things like that. So those are creative things that maybe individually we don't have the means to be able to say, I'm going to build me a robot today. But what it's calling us to do is to think outside the box. Then the last thing would be is how are we going to protect our people? I remember when this started, it feels like so long ago, but when people were like, we're not doing that, we're not going to take temperatures, we're not going to whatever. And I think as things have gotten closer to home and you start seeing people, there's a face to COVID, you start thinking, this could really be a reality. And so implementing in our regular strategy, I don't think that face masks and quarantining and contact tracing are going away. I think they're going to be a reality for a long time. So how are we taking this really seriously as it's coming closer to home, as it's coming in your building and you're having employees call and say, I was exposed, I'm not feeling good. How are we going to strategize around keeping the rest of our population safe? Do we know where that person talked? Do we know what we're supposed to say? Do we know the laws protected? How HIPAA plays a role in this? How are we going to follow the law, yet keep our people safe and be good communicators around what's going on in our workplace? Just like when this started, our clients came to us in fear. Your people are living in every day in some level of uncertainty. And will it hit me? How will it affect my job? Will we be open? How will it change the way I come and work every day? So communication, contingency plan, being creative, all important in those strategies.
You said something pretty interesting, HIPAA and, employee fear, right? And that can be kind of from two things. You have two things there. You have HIPAA, right? Where you have, protections by law and what you can actually do as far as, medical and knowing that information. Then you have employee fear, right? That somebody has a realistic, realistic reason. Maybe they have diabetes. Maybe they have, some type, maybe they're at a certain age or some type of condition that falls within the parameters, which the government is saying that, puts you into a risk pool, so you have those two things. Someone comes in here, I think about it and I don't know where this would lie if it falls into a HIPAA situation. I mean, can you ask or tell, an employee that say was working in the same office space or that was in contact with someone that, hey, we need you to get tested before you can come back in the office? And to be completely honest, I'm not even 100% sure that answer, because it still seems a little gray to me. And I'm kind of curious in 2021, where that's going to end up. But I just that's more of a statement, I guess, than a question, right? So, so just to stay on this topic a little bit longer, right? So I have an employee with a health condition or someone who's a certain age, like I was just talking about, and they're asking for accommodations at the workplace, right? They're asking for a safety plan. And obviously the safety plans can be a lot of different things that are written out from, certain upgraded hygiene, how we manage the lunch area or whatnot. Am I obligated going into 2021 to provide, say, for someone that's requesting that someone who's actually requesting an accommodation? And I'll put that to you, Peggy. I don't know what your experience is with that right now. Is it a moral obligation, or is it I guess a legal obligation?
Well, I think in some regard, it really, I'm going to say it depends, but under the ADA really came out and talked about their role as well in the COVID-19, because people wanted to know, does this, where does this fall? How does ADA measure in here? And some of this actually pushed back to the guidelines of the CDC and the Department of Health to protect you. So the ADA kind of leaned that way. But in the same regard, the question will always come back to, if you have someone that has a disability that requires an obligation or an accommodation, should you accommodate? And some of these things maybe aren't on a normal day, maybe aren't disabilities, but I think it goes back to the one thing that the ADA requires is an interactive dialogue. So to go back and to say, regardless of what you know and you don't know, commit to the person, have that dialogue, understand what they're looking for, and say, is there a way for us to accommodate that within our work environment? Now, what the ADA doesn't typically require is that, and I remember even with unemployment where they talked about, I have so many people that are afraid to come to work for whatever the reason, whether it's they feel like their health is compromised in some way or they just didn't know. Fear is really not the answer to respond to. Rather to respond in a way that's intelligent, that's, interactive, that just has a good conversation. I want to go back to what I said before about the contingency plan, about having a plan. I think even with people that are maybe have some protection under the ADA, the thing that's important is, are we protecting our people in the workplace? So if we are doing the right things, if we're doing the social distancing, the masking, really doing good cleaning within the work environment, and we have a case to be made that we're offering an environment that's as safe as where they were,
Right.
the prior, that wouldn't necessarily an accommodation make. But again, I think, again, having those interactive dialogues and understanding what you can do, what's not a hardship for the business is always worth it with regard to your people.
Yeah, I want to throw one thing in here, but I want to try to open up because we started late for questions. But just a quick question on this. I think this would be interesting to people that are listening in right now, because I thought about this as well, right? So, is an accommodation need to be provided for me based on a family member that is non-working at the office that might be at risk? So basically, you follow what I'm saying on that? So
you have somebody that could be at risk in your home,
Right.
might be compromised. And so do you need to make an accommodation to somebody? My gut would tell me that you don't. And, but you know what? One of the things that I always recommend when people call me and we have a conversation is that I'm not a physician. And I think that's one thing that COVID has really pushed people to be doctors and lawyers in a topic that they don't have any business playing with. I would be going back and, again, having an interactive dialogue with that individual. I would be asking them to have some sort of conversation with the doctor, and I would be educating myself so that possibly we could make an educated decision or discussion around what would happen. I do not believe that an employer has an obligation to an immunocompromised family member, is what my gut tells me, but I would be doing more homework than what I'm doing sitting here today.
Yeah, and I think the big thing you're going to see in 2021, and I'm sorry I'm going along quickly right now, but is telemedicine. I think we've seen such a huge, tremendous use of it. I think it's proved its worth and its value. Obviously, if there's something serious, you have to get to the hospital. But we're seeing more and more. I know our company provides telemedicine to everybody at no copays, no anything. I mean, so the most used thing, right, is going to be that, hey, I don't feel well. I need a prescription to be written for me. And you can get that stuff done in less than 30 minutes. You get looked at by a physician, you speak to them, you can get up-to-date stuff, get the medication. And again, this is something I know our company provides to all the all the partners that we deal with at no additional charge. And another great thing about that is the worker's not, running off to try to get a doctor's appointment that can take 2 days, and they get medication and they get where they have to get to, and they can get back to work quicker. But before we open up any questions, I did want to give a quick summary of Synchrony HR. We're a one-stop for all companies' needs, one phone call away, basically, right, Peggy? So all these type of things, whether it's healthcare, workers' comp, HR, safety, which Max and his group would work with us on, we do it all through a single source technology platform, everything from your workers' comp, right on down the gamut to your legislative changes and federal and state regulations and all that. But we have 5 minutes right now. So Max, can we open up for questions? Is there anything specific?
Hey, there was one on here from Dave Manning. Have you seen a trend of things getting better for the owner operators, or is this something that may hover around for a while?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's kind of there's a lot of questions to that question, right, Max? I mean, because is that from a safety and risk management? Is that from from a commercial standpoint? I don't know, Max, do you want to tackle that on the commercial side, or?
I mean, besides claims being paid out or not being paid out, which is the real up in the air thing right now, the insurance industry has been, for the most part, unaffected, whereas premiums are not skyrocketing. They're not dropping way down. Just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean you can skip out on buying fleet auto insurance or general liability insurance, or because there's a pandemic, you don't have to buy property insurance on your location. So I guess that it's not getting better. It's not getting worse. It's just kind of staying the same. The real question is on the business interruption claims, where your business is losing money because there's not as many people coming in and buying your product or service. You're losing out on revenues, and that is due to the pandemic. But like I said earlier, we're still not sure if those claims are going to be up to the Supreme Court in the next couple months.
Can we back up on that, Max? I didn't mean to interrupt you. So let's get off the BI part, right? Let's talk a little bit about the the regular type stuff, right? If you have a policy that can be audited, and they're basing your policy maybe based on that you have more exposure, now you have less exposure. I mean, can folks go back and audit 2020 to 2021?
Absolutely. I mean, with any policy, obviously a property policy you're not going to audit because that's a fixed piece of property that you had before. But a general liability policy absolutely can be audited because those policies are based on sales figures. So let's say, for example, Max's Mini Storage projected $500,000 worth of sales in 2020,
right?
In revenue for 2020. We'll say due to the pandemic, I got about 300,000. So that rating factor that they rate my GL policy off of and gets factored into how much premium I pay, that can be audited and adjusted for, a different forecast of the year, or a different, I guess, actual of your year's performance versus the forecast.
Yeah.
So
that's hard dollars too, right? I mean, that's something that if you did have that kind of an effect, that's literally an audit which would be reimbursed to you. Just like, the insurance companies are always auditing us, right? The business owners. That's the way to audit back, and that can create some dollars. That's something Absolutely. For folks out there to think about for 2021. I think from our standpoint, we have such great technology tools, going into 2021. Peggy, you'll attest to this. Right down to applicant tracking, electronic onboarding, time and attendance, allocation reporting, which would be big in the storage space. As far as, providing that snapshot so that you folks can see that, and, by department, by location, all of that. So there's a tremendous amount of work and help that we've done for folks that are inside the, the storage vertical. And if you guys have any questions about any of that, we'd sure be more than happy to get on a phone call and just kind of take a deeper dive into that. If there's any commercial type stuff, we can have a conversation around that as well. Max would be more than happy to jump on a call. But I think our time is up with about 30 seconds left. So we do apologize for some of the glitches, but Peggy, thank you so much for getting on the call. It was really great listening to you. Max, you as well. And thanks for taking my questions too, by the way, because I had a few there too that you guys were answering for me. So
absolutely.
Okay.
Does anyone else have anything? Is there anything else in the chat? I don't see anything.
Well, we're going to segue into another topic session. So join us on that. I think that's at 3:15, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yep. The roundtable.
Okay. So we'll have a roundtable. So we look forward to seeing you folks on that as well.
Yeah, and that's just going to be, open conversation. So whatever, any
Exactly.
questions you have about anything you may have heard, please bring them, and
That's our Q&A session, guys. That's what that's going to be. We're not going to introduce Peggy again. No, no, I will. Just kidding. Thanks, everybody. Okay, Max, you got control, or do I have to end the session?
I think you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.